Move quickly to our next conversation as United Capital has expanded its continental expansion strategy with a successful acquisition of investment banking licenses in Ethiopia and Rwanda. With these approvals, United Capital becomes the first foreign institution licensed to provide investment banking services in Ethiopia, covering financial advisory services, security brokerage, and portfolio management, marking a significant milestone in the development of the country's emerging capital markets ecosystem. The license enables the group to establish operations in Ethiopia and participate in capital market activities, supporting market development while expanding access to its range of financial and investment solutions across the region. According to the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, the approval followed a comprehensive review of a regulatory review process involving multiple government institutions and extensive cross-market due diligence. The milestone comes after the group secured a regulatory approval from Capital Market Authorities to provide trust services, investment banking, and portfolio management services in Rwanda, for further reinforcing its strategic footprint across East and Central Africa. I've been trying to get him, but he's here now. He's Ejimeke Okoli. He's the Director, African Regions, United Capital Group. It's good to have you in, but I've been waiting for you. But all the same, you're here. Great stuff there. Good to have you in again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Present West, East, Central Africa. Now, beyond expanding to all of these countries, what's your vision of building a more connected African capital market, and why is it important? Because I think there's that need for us to connect as a continent.
Yes, I mean, it's really significant for us as a group, United Capital, and more importantly for Nigeria. So it's not just the United Capital story, it's a Nigerian story. We are exporting our expertise as a business, a Nigerian, based business that has operated for over 6 decades. And more importantly, even from a regulatory standpoint, the SEC Nigeria, the Nigerian Exchange, have also been supporting capital market development in both markets, especially in Ethiopia. The SEC is a key stakeholder in the capital market development in terms of a regulatory framework, even for Ethiopia. So they are borrowing a lot from Nigeria, not just from the regulation, but now an operator. And it's particularly significant for us, for Ethiopia, being the first foreign institution to be licensed to play in the financial services sector. Wow. Ethiopia has operated as a closed economy since forever. And we say kudos to the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, to the Ethiopia Capital Market Authority Director General, Hannah Tehelku, for providing United Capital that platform to be the first foreign player in that market. It's particularly significant for Africa because it's clear that collaboration will be the key driver in terms of trying to develop the African financial markets, with Nigeria being one of the largest capital markets on the continent after, say, South Africa. Morocco, Egypt, Nigeria. Because of currency devaluation, our rankings, interchange. Nigeria has one of the most developed on the market, especially from a regulatory framework. And for us, we are just exporting the Nigerian story, exporting our business expertise, trying to also foster skills transfer in terms of local capacity development, even in those markets, because it's not just about a monopoly or going there to exploit. It's deploying patient capital that, of course, will reflate those economies and foster economic development in those markets.
And that is why I want to ask, how important is the transfer of knowledge in helping deepen capital markets across the continent?
It's very, very important, and we are so happy to play that crucial role. Now we are not just an architect, for capital mobilization. We are playing a key role in African financial market integration from an operator standpoint. We've also seen our regulators lend, a supporting hand in trying to see how strong capital markets should be regulated on the continent. And for us, our vision is driven by one primary philosophy, Africapitalism. It's something we believe so strongly in. And the way we have interpreted it, at least from a capital market standpoint, is that African capital, mobilized and structured through African institutions, regulated within the regulatory framework of African regulators, and eventually deployed for the purpose of economic development and financial market acceleration across Africa. So that's what all of this stands for us. It's about 20 years from now, we want to say, yes, we made that bold step. Players in Ethiopia can access capital, mobilized in other parts of the continent. It's really about finding a balance from areas of surplus to areas of deficit. And at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to accelerate financial market development on the continent, so investors have so many options in terms of capital raising, in terms of capital formation, in terms of wealth generation, in terms of financial inclusion tools, because that's the only way the continent can remain on a sustainably developmental path. I think gone are the days where we always depend on aid from other continents to come into Africa, and repayment becomes a challenge. But if we can generate our own capital, it's not going to be a sprint, it's a marathon. And we know so many other institutions at some point in time will join the United Capital story, such that African financial markets will be a lot more integrated, and capital raising and wealth creation will just follow sustainably.
All right, now the African Continental Free Trade Area is expected to drive greater economic integration. I'm concerned really about this AFCFTA. Now, what roles do capital markets and financial institutions like yours play or have to do in playing support vision? Particularly at this time as we are improving connectivity across the continent.
Yeah, for us, we are bolder at this point to say we are in 12 African countries, spanning West and East Africa, Ethiopia, Rwanda on the east. Rwanda, in terms of geographical location, is more centrally located, so that covers East and Central Africa. And then on the Western front, we are, of course, very dominant in Nigeria. And last year, I was here talking about the expansion into Francophone West Africa, covering eight countries. So that gives us, a unique geographical spread where we are able to mobilize capital on one end. First, it strengthens our business expertise we have perfected over 6 decades. We are exporting all of that now, and we have been able to. The most important thing for us now is that we're entering markets that are nascent in their developmental stage. So we're not entering mature markets where you are going to be very competitive in terms of other players on the market. We're entering nascent markets that are in their developmental stage. They're also borrowing from our regulatory frameworks. So there's a bigger demand for bringing in expertise to be able to accelerate those markets in terms of the kinds of capital market solutions, from bond issuances, to equity capital market listings, to M&A structures for companies looking to merge. And even from a regulatory standpoint, what this means is African institutions, whether government or businesses, do not necessarily have to go outside the continent, even if they're looking for large-scale capital. Look at the recent example of even the Dangote IPO that's been the buzz for the last 6 months. It's garnered a lot of interest across the continent. All the markets we've been to, from your regulators, everybody wants a piece of the pie. And Liko himself has said for him it's about a legacy. He can easily raise this money from, the Western world because he has built a business model that's investment grade. But for him, it's about a legacy of making sure Africans, have their own story to say, yes, this is a major listing that should, span across beyond the Nigerian market into other markets, so that other Africans can say, yes, once large institutions like this can be listed on our markets, then we have a piece of the pie. And the African Continental Free Trade Agreement seems to foster these kinds of discussions. It will interest you to note that in Ethiopia, during its last financial forum, Ethiopia Finance Forum, deal flows of over $13 billion in terms of infrastructure agreements were signed. Ethiopia has, for the last 2 years, has been the largest attractor of foreign direct investment in East Africa. And all of this, about 80% of it is deployed to infrastructure development. Now, going forward, foreign direct investment may not now necessarily be money from the West. It could be money from Nigeria, it could be money from Ghana, it could be money from Rwanda, and all of the continent starts to see itself as one major economic and financial market. With a population of over $1.5 billion, I think the big players on the continent will have the right business model, operating with the right philosophy of how to do business in Africa, will be best positioned to benefit.
So you mean that that's growing landmark transaction like the proposed IPO, which you mentioned, do you believe this kind of deals can unlock greater cross-border investment and, of course, accelerate development?
Definitely, and I'm speaking from an informed point of view, because even during conversations, during our licensing process, regulators are deeply, deeply interested in the Dangote IPO. They see it as an African story, not just Nigerian, conglomerate, or trying to list across exchanges. There's a sense of connection that yes, this is one of our own, because you typically hear most of the big and large institutions in terms of dual listing is always on an African exchange and another in the West, which there's nothing wrong with it, but this time most of the African, capital market players are saying, look, we want a piece of this pie, and with United Capital going into each of these markets, it has singled us out to say, maybe you're the ones who will bring this to us. But, we'll leave that for another day, since most of the conversation around the IPO is not very public. But there's a lot of interest, I can assure you.
Now, the licensing of from Ethiopia and Rwanda, many will talk about regulatory confidence. It speaks to something about your firm's governance, credibility, and all of that. Tell us also about that. You're able to clinch this. It's not that easy.
It isn't, and for us, it's not that easy, because what's even more difficult is that we've built a business that has, sustained its performance over the last 6 decades. You will know from normal business, knowledge that, hey, businesses hardly last beyond one generation. But when you're doing business for over six decades and you're still a market leader, you're still the only listed capital market operator in the Nigerian financial market, listed on the Nigerian exchange since 2013. Our numbers have been, 4-time fastest growing publicly listed company in Africa. We've ranked, among that for the last 4 years by the Financial Times. In terms of our share price, we've delivered over 700% in shareholder value for the last seven years since 2018. In terms of the governance structure, of the institution, we are very, I don't want to use the word risk averse, but the board of United Capital, all we look at is risk management. Now, when you're able to convince the board to say, this move we are making, it's in the best interest of the institution, then there's no other risk we see out there that can prevent us from achieving our goals. So the regulators in those markets see us as the kind of institution they want to play in their market. Because being a publicly listed company, your financials are always in the public. So you're not holding back in terms of disclosures. In terms of corporate governance, we're solid. In terms of regulatory backing, we have the support of the SEC and, of course, the Nigerian exchange, even on this journey, securing approvals, even from our market, before securing licenses abroad. So I think the United Capital story has been one of resilience, has been one of hard work towards delivering the kind of performance we've been seeing. And it will interest you to note that the SEC came up with new regulatory guidelines in terms of recapitalization for capital market operators.
I'm aware.
And the deadline is June 2027. But guess what? By February 2026, United Capital had crossed that milestone. So all of that has strengthened.
Let's look ahead. What do you think? In the comment, should we expect further expansion? What more should we be looking at? We have just 1-2 minutes to wrap this up.
Everything that represents progress, look out for it. Whatever metric you want to use, as long as it represents progress, show that an institution is progressive, that's what you should look out for in terms of business performance, in terms of shareholder value, in terms of not just expansion for growth, but also scale, in terms of skills transfer, in terms of adhering very, very strongly to regulatory requirements. Because now our regulators are not just Nigerian now. So we have multiple regulators regulating us across different African markets. So that puts,
they all have their standards.
Exactly. But we've done it for 6 decades in Nigeria, so we know what it takes to succeed. And if you don't have United Capital shares, I'll leave it at that.
Oh, don't worry. When you get to that point, we'll have an agreement for you to come. But it's really good to see you, Ejimeke Okoli, again, Director, African Regions, United Capital Group. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best as always.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Well, that's our time today. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. I'll see you same time tomorrow. We'll talk more business. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day.